This demonstration covers the bandsaw, how it works and how to set it up safely. The bandsaw works, if I open the door up, this is a 14-inch bandsaw and it works with a 14-inch diameter wheel on the top and the bottom of the bandsaw. The blade itself is one 12-foot, usually 10, 12-foot long blade that's continuous. So if I turn it on, it's continuously running and cutting. So this saw cuts very quickly. So as it's cutting, or as it's running, the wheels are high centered, so the blade really isn't on there very tightly. So, to keep it from falling off, they put ball bearings, one on each side of the blade to make sure it doesn't go left or right. There's another ball bearing behind the blade to make sure it doesn't get pushed off as I'm cutting forward. There is nothing to stop it from coming off towards you if you're pulling back. So there's certain things you need to make sure to do so we don't pull the blade off the track. Now when you cut, I want you to make sure that the guard is about 1/4 of an inch above your board. There's a knob in the back and you just lift it up and down. That way my smallest finger doesn't have enough room to get under this ball bearing to get into the blade. So the only way that you can cut yourself for the most part is if my finger is extended in line with that blade, which is much harder to do because most people are quick enough to pull a finger back should they get close to the blade. When you're cutting, and I'll raise this up for some of it just so you can see the blade, make sure that you're not getting a burn on the end. Sometimes as you cut, the blade will actually burn the end of your board just a little bit. Usually that'll mean that it's dull or you're going a little bit too slow. Most of the time it's because it's dull. If the blade gets dull, let me know. I have a couple more in the back. I can just switch the blade to a new one. As you're cutting, generally speaking, let's say I'm just cutting a straight line like this. If I just want to cut that off, it only cuts straight forward. So I have to line it up like this so the line is pointing at the saw blade. I've had a number of kids put it in so like this, thinking that they'll get this cut. So what happens is they start cutting here and they realize as they get to the line, I'm going the wrong direction. I'll end up cutting straight through it if I'm not careful. So they stop, twist the board, and then try to keep cutting. Now, when I turn this on for a moment, have a look at the blade, you'll see that the blade kind of clicks. It does this, little at a time. The reason that happens is because they put this in and twisted the blade and bent it. Fortunately, it didn't break, so that's good. However, now that it's doing this, it's going to leave it's going to click as it goes through the board and leave your line a little bit more jagged than it should be. So be careful to always line your board up straight at what you're cutting. It needs to be relatively a straight line. If I need to turn a little bit as I'm going, that's fine, but it needs to be pointing at the blade. Why is it important to keep moving forward if you're cutting a curve? Well, let's put a simple curve on there. Okay, like that, say. As I'm cutting, I know I would need to start this curve facing this way and then cut and turn as I go. If I stop turning, let's say I'm cutting off of the line, I'll use my pencil on this one. I'm cutting and I start getting off the line. If I stop, twist to get it back in line and then start going back again, I've just bent the blade, and most of the time that'll actually break the blade. Like I said, this must be a good one because it didn't break the time the kid twisted. However, by stopping, I'm forcing the blade to twist and then try to start cutting again. So what I should have done is either back it out and start cutting again, or just turned into that curve to get back on my line. And then I'd come back and clean that up later. So why is it important to keep moving forward? Because you could either break or twist the blade, similar to number 3 on your sheet. How do you keep from having to back out of a long curve? Well, let's just use the same curve. If this curve is tight enough that you don't think the blade can make it around in one pass, simply make what are called relief cuts. Relief cuts are simply some little cuts that go in and out again. So if I simply put it on here and go in, just to the line, the curve and back, just to the curve and out, just to the curve and out, and so forth. I've made these 3 and I've got a couple more to make. Now when I go back and cut, I cut to here, this piece falls off. Then I cut the rest here and that falls off and this falls off and so forth. There's no wood left on my board to pinch the blade as I'm turning it. You've always got to push forward, but if it's too tight of a curve, say like this, I've got to put those relief cuts in there to relieve the pressure, hence the name. So my blade doesn't get pinched and start burning the wood or snapping in two.